into some pretty meaty topics in this section. There is some rather advanced stuff to come. I thought it might be nice to start with a quick win. If you look at the Get It Done project in the emulator on the right, the two tasks I have there now don't have a description. And there's something that just bothers me about this. It's not centered around the checkbox or the star. If I add a task with a description, so some task, and then with a description, and then save, well, that is nicely centered around the checkbox. But if I do a new task, no description, it's not centered. So let's do a very quick, small UI fix right now. The reason this happens is a thing to do with views being gone versus invisible, and the best solution to this being a concept on constraint layout chaining of views. I'm going to close down the emulator, and we need to get into the layout file for our task item. You can see here I'm in activity underscore main. I need to shift and go to item underscore task, our task item, and make sure it's in the split mode with the code on the left and the preview on the right. We can go ahead and close activity underscore main if it's open. So right now, with the title and details, everything looks centered. We can show the issue by going down to our text view details and actually just removing the tools text. So I will remove tools text to be blank, and then we have our problem. If I open the emulator, same issue. It's not centered. So what can we do? Well, one thing we could do is programmatically make the view gone rather than invisible. There is a visibility property on pretty much all views in Android. If I start typing the word visibility, there's visible, which it is now. I'll just put the text back in. Hello. So we can have visible, we can have invisible, but as you might predict, that's no good. The view is still there. It is the same size. It's just not visible. Or there's gone. So let's change it to gone. Okay, I can see that blue line disappearing off to the side and having no height. But if I click off, our task still isn't centered. So it's not really good enough to just make the view gone. How can we get it so the title is centered? And in a constraint layout, the way to do this is with chaining views. Let's look at our title text view. The top of this is to the top of the parent, and the parent is the overall constraint layout container. So the top is to the top of the parent, but the bottom isn't constrained to anything. Our text view details is then top to the bottom of the title, but if that goes, well, it doesn't really have any effect on the title. If we remember opposing constraints, and I get rid of the text view details like this, I'll just comment it out, Control/Command/. If I did bottom to the bottom of parent here, well, that is now centered, no problem. But how can we do this opposing constraints thing, match constraints, with an optional description? And the answer is a combination of constraint chain, link them all together, and the idea of making a view gone. I will undo the bottom to the bottom of parent for now, and I'll undo commenting out the code to put that details back in. So for now, I will make this visible again. So visible, there it is. So to make a chain, you just have to pin all of the edges in a straight line from one side to the other. So the first thing I will do is do top to top of parent, that's fine, and now bottom to the top of text view details. This forms a chain. I have top to the bottom of, so this is bottom to the top of the details, and this is top to the bottom of. We have both of those things in there, it's forming the chain. And the last thing to do, to center it completely in the parent, is to make this one bottom to the bottom of the parent. So you have to imagine now we have a nice chain. The top of the title to the top of the parent, and the bottom of this to the details. The details, the top of this is to the bottom of the title, and then the bottom is to the bottom of the parent. Because watch what happens now when I make this view gone. As if by magic, our title centers. And the reason it centers is because this view is gone, it doesn't exist, so this chain becomes top to top of parent, details is gone, so we're changed to the gone thing, there is no height here, and the bottom of the gone thing is to the bottom of the parent, and it completes the chain. It's the equivalent of having this being bottom to the bottom of the parent without the chain. So that is constraint layout chaining. Of course, it's not the complete picture because we need to programmatically make the view gone for it to work. So let's remove this visibility thing for now. And we'll head over to our adapter code. So shift task adapter. And we need to do a quick check in here for whether or not the details has any text. So just above where we set the text for the text view details, we will do an if statement. If the task.description, and we can call a very useful function called is null or empty. So if it's either an empty string or the property is just null, we can run some code. And that code will be text view details dot visibility equals view dot gone. Otherwise, we will set the text, and we mustn't forget to make the view visible. Remember, these views recycle. You can get issues if you scroll up and down if we don't make it visible again. So we have to explicitly make it visible if it's not null or empty, but if it is null or empty, we will make it gone. And this is the code that we need, complete with our constraint layout chaining, to center the title if there is no description. We've got the chain from top to bottom, and then if it's null or empty, the view is gone, has 0 height, and with the chain that will cause our title text view to be centered in the parent. So let's give this a quick run. You can see Our descriptionless tasks are centered, and of course, if the task still has a description, it's also centered. Fantastic. So that is constraint layout chaining and making views gone programmatically. As we're developing this app, we may start to have an increasing list of our test tasks here, do some stuff, no description, quite a few junk tasks. And at the moment, we don't have any way to actually delete the tasks. So if you yourself are having a play, you may have an even bigger list than me that is growing and growing. Now, eventually, if you do take a look at the Google Tasks app, the real one, the way you would delete tasks from there is you'd actually tap the task to go to a new screen, the View Task screen. And we haven't done that yet. We'll do that a bit later on. And from there, there's an overflow menu, like a 3-dot menu, where you can click that and there's the option to delete it. I'm talking about deleting it rather than just crossing it off. So let's say you don't want it to appear in the list at all. You want to completely get rid of it. Okay? We're not going to roll out the View Task screen yet. That's a whole piece of work in itself that will take a bit of time. We will do it in this section. What we need is some way just to clear off some of our junk tasks. And a very simple way we can do that is rather than clicking the checkbox to cross it off, we can just have it so if you long press a task, it will just go ahead and delete it straight away. No pop-up, no warning. It's just for development purposes. It will also give us the opportunity to see a new thing we can do with views. Rather than a click listener, we can set a long click listener. So that's something new. So let's go ahead and do this. I have my emulator on the right and I have my tasks fragment and my tasks adapter open for this tutorial. If you can go ahead and get these same two files open. And we're going to start actually in our tasks adapter. So we'll come back to the tasks fragment in the tasks adapter and we'll scroll down to where we set up our item binding here, the bind function. We have a couple of click listeners. We have the checkbox click listener and we have the toggle star click listener. So we actually want to have a click listener for the whole row, for the entire item. And there is a couple of places we could do it. We could go up to the onBind function here, onBind view holder, and we could do holder.itemView. That returns the root view of the view holder. And we could set a click listener here or a long click listener. However, to keep things tidy, a better way is to do it in the root view of our binding. If I command click into the binding by clicking checkbox, so control click, command click, okay, the root view of this binding would be indeed our constraint layout. And whenever you're using view binding, there's a very easy way to get to the topmost view, the parent view, the root view, and that is with, I'll just type the word this, so you know we're talking about our task binding, this.root. Very simple. And in fact, if I type root, you can see it's a constraint layout. And when I command click it, it takes us to the constraint layout. So if we do our long click listener here on the root of the item task binding, that will be a click listener or a long click listener for anywhere on the row. The user can click anywhere and it will pick that up. We don't need the word this. I'll get rid of that. So we could just do set on click listener. But of course, we might be accidentally clicking or tapping or missing our checkbox. So rather than setting a click listener where we could accidentally delete these tasks, let's do something new, nice and easy. Let's set a long click listener. Set on long click listener and do the one with a lambda. And we'll do a line break. And you can see that unlike for the click listeners, if I just do a click listener, that's fine. But we have some kind of error with the long click listener. And the long click listener error is because if I hover over it, we actually need to return in this lambda a Boolean, a true or false. So somewhere here at the end, we can do whatever code like that, but we need to return either true or false. And the reason for this with a long click listener is we need to tell the system, have we consumed the click? Do we want to fire any click listeners that might be set as well? Okay, so there can be a bit of confusion if you have a click listener and a long click listener. So when they long click, you actually return typically true to say, I am consuming this, I want this, don't do anything else. Let me handle this. Okay, so we'll return true, get rid of the error. And that is all you need to do really to set a long click listener. If I go ahead and do toast, make text, we can actually get context from our binding. We can do this.root, and then there's context on most views. So that's okay to get our context. We'll do a quick toast to prove our long click listener is working. And we'll do my long click works, exclamation mark, toast.length long, and show. And we'll just quickly run this to make sure our long click listener works anywhere on our task item. So running this, if I long click on today's new task, we get a toast. But the star still works, the checkbox still works, okay? But we now have a long click anywhere else if they long press. Fantastic. So back to the code, we will remove the toast. So we want to delete the task. And if I click over to the tasks fragment, where we're doing our task DAO stuff and our thread stuff in here, so we need some way to communicate from the adapter to the fragment so we can handle the database thing, the DAO thing there. So back in the tasks adapter, can you think how we might communicate with our fragment? So for those of you who aren't sure, think about how we do it already in our checkbox and our toggle star with a listener on task updated, we use this callback pattern, this interface, and that is at the bottom. So we have an interface called a task updated listener, but now we actually want to delete the task. So we can simply add another function in our interface called onTaskDeleted. And then actually we should still give it the task so we know which task to delete. And you know what? We're doing an update here and a delete here. Task updated listener isn't actually the best name now. Really, this interface is for any sort of interaction in our list. It's really a task click listener now. There's an action for task updated, there's an action for task deleted. So let's rename this. I'm going to do Shift F6. So Shift F6 to refactor that. It selects it, and I'm going to simply change it to task item click listener. And we have on task updated, on task delete. So two different types of task item click. Okay. And now we have this extra method here, this extra function. We can use this in our long click listener. We can simply do listener.onTaskDeleted. We have access to the task. It's there on line 39 as an argument in our bind function. So we simply do task, and anyone who's listening to these task interactions will receive notification when we long press on the item here. So back in our tasks fragment, well, scrolling to the top, we now have an error that says it's not abstract and we're not implementing this new member on task deleted. We've just updated our task item click listener with a new function, and we handle on task updated, but we're not yet handling the new on task deleted function. So we can either do Control I, Option I, and implement it like that. That's one way. Or we can just start typing on task deleted. And because we have it at the top that we're implementing this interface, Android Studio knows what we want to do. It's going to suggest we ought to complete that. So this time I think I will. We get the to do not yet implemented, but we'll delete that. And now we can delete our task. We will open a new thread for now until we find a better way later in the course. We'll kick off a new thread. And lucky for us, when we made our task DAO, if I do the word delete, we already have our delete task function. We already added that in our task DAO when we set up our room database. And I can simply pass in the task, not forgetting to fetch all tasks. And so when I run this app now, say I want to delete my silly no description task, well, I'll just go ahead and long click it, and away it goes. Not a very nice user experience. Our users could accidentally delete their tasks, but for development purposes, to stop us completely spamming our list with loads of junk, pretty useful. And of course, I can go ahead and keep adding my new tasks with a description as normal. But if I add some junk, like I'm testing things, and I don't want to see that while developing, at least I've got a way now to delete it. Great stuff.